phone from him. A pilot is sent with the nuke. But at that moment, the scientist discovers Andromeda can feed on radiation. They immediately call the White House to cancel the bombing, and the orders reach the pilot just in time. But when she's about to fly back, her plane begins malfunctioning and the nuke falls anyway. The people in the army camp are fine, but seismic stations are picking this up all over the world. So Scott orders his PR team to tell them one of their planes malfunctioned and fell during a test. Jeremy argues with Manchek, thinking they're being lied to again. But Charlene checks the pilot's last transmission and confirms Andromeda caused the malfunction because it's mutated and it now can consume nylon. It probably reached the jet either through the smoke from the fire when it flew over the area. Finding the dead soldiers outside the perimeter also confirms Andromeda has mutated to be able to travel from dead bodies and animals. Meanwhile, Peter gets a call from Charlie, who reveals he did get the video from Jack. Peter still denies knowing anything and promises to look into it before calling Ferris to ask him to take care of any loose ends. Ferris arrives at the camp and shows Jack that they have pictures of him buying illegal substances. But this isn't enough to bribe Jack into telling him what he knows. While chlorazine and flamethrowers are used in the area to kill all the contaminated animals because Andromeda is moving even more quickly with each mutation, Jack is put in a helicopter to be taken away from the camp. However, Jack gets suspicious when Ferris gives his guard a bag claiming it's Jack's when it actually isn't. Once they're flying far enough from the camp, Jack distracts the guard by opening a fire extinguisher. The smoke causes the pilot to land and Jack jumps off the plane, which suddenly explodes. His instincts had been right. The bag had been a bomb to stop him from returning to the city. By the time Ferris and his soldiers arrive to check the wreckage, Jack is gone, and Ferris sends a bunch of men to find him. Back in the lab, Angela manages to get information from the crazy sheriff's doctor and learns he had 2 incidences of ketoacidosis. After watching the mutated structure for a while, Jeremy and TSI theorize that Andromeda can communicate among its separate parts. This is confirmed when they discover that a separate Andromeda sample that hadn't been experimented on has also adapted to the threat. Jeremy checks with Manchek in his scans, which show Andromeda is moving in direction of the river because it's intelligent and wants to contaminate the water to reach more areas. This direction would also take it to Las Vegas. Manchek orders to evacuate the city and shut down all airports to attempt to contain it. Later, Angela is having a nap when she suddenly dreams about being back in Piedmont. Seeing Kyle play cards with his friends and remembering what he said about his medical history, this finally gives her the answer she's been looking for. The baby, the sheriff, and Kyle all suffered from acidosis, meaning Andromeda can only live in a very narrow range of acidity. Developing an acid to kill it is possible, but that solution would kill humans as well, and Andromeda could send a message to mutate accordingly anyway. Meanwhile, Scott is dealing with one more problem. A group of environmental protesters has used violence to take over a controversial thermal vent mine that the president had been championing. The team discovers Andromeda has binary code in its structure, which brings the theory of it being a message from the future, warning them or expecting them to do something about it. The only thing Earth has in the present that can't be in the future must be some natural resource that we used up or destroyed. They change from binary to ASCII to decipher the code and finally get to see the message. There's a number, a symbol with interlocking triangles, and the words, Bacillus infernus, which translates to, bacteria from hell. Bill recognizes it from past work. It's a bacteria that can only be found deep in the ocean and can survive extreme environments like very acidic pH. It also is harmless to humans and feeds on sulfur from the vents, which is what Andromeda is made of. The president's vent mining must have destroyed all the bacteria, explaining why they don't have it in the future to keep Andromeda at bay. No matter how much it mutates, Andromeda can't change its basic sulfur composition. So Bacillus infernus is the perfect solution to destroy it. The scientists call the president to ask for a sample from the vents, and Scott is desperate enough to authorize it. In the meantime in Utah, a young couple is fooling around when the boyfriend takes a break to relieve himself. While doing number 2, a rat bites his rear, and he immediately begins feeling sick. Seeing as his boyfriend is getting violent, Leela decides to get in their car and drive away. Ferris calls Charlie to tell him Jack is dead. But actually, Jack is wandering around until eventually he comes across Leela and asks for her phone. But she doesn't have signal. Nearby, the soldiers guarding the borders are attacked by infected birds, causing a dead body to fall in the water and begin spreading Andromeda through the river as well. Peter isn't happy with Scott's decisions and sends Ferris to kidnap Charlene's family. In the lab, the scientists confirm Bacillus infernus can kill Andromeda and begin growing it in biological breeder vessels that will accelerate the process. While she's working, Charlene gets a call from her husband in Ferris, who gives her a warning. If she wants to see her family again, she must hide away a sample of Andromeda. Afterward, the team has another meeting because Jeremy wants to inform them that Andromeda is smarter than it looks. There's a high chance it attacked the plane on purpose to get the nuke and feed. This means that now they have the weapon they needed. They have to destroy every Andromeda sample in the lab before it learns what they're doing. Charlene volunteers to do the destroying so she can keep a sample. Meanwhile, Andromeda mutates again thanks to its contact with water. And now it's advancing incredibly fast on land too. Leela and Jack can see it change the color of the plants, and when it comes closer, they begin driving away. Some of the soldiers that are after Jack get killed, but enough of them escape, starting a car chase as they open fire. Layla's car begins losing oil when they hit a rock, but this gives Jack an idea. When they reach a tunnel under a bridge, they park the car sideways to block it. Then Jack uses his t-shirt to light it on fire before escaping with Leela on foot. After a few hours, the Bacillus infernus is finally ready, and Manchek and his pilots stop by the lab to pick up the containers. While the army begins covering Piedmont and the surrounding area, an alarm suddenly goes off in the lab. The computer detected contamination when Charlene tried to retrieve the sample she hid in the lab will soon self-destruct. This alarm has lots of flashing lights that trigger TSI's photosensitive epilepsy, and his seizure causes him to accidentally destroy the self-destruct control panel on their lab level of the building. To stop the alarm, they'll have to go to another level, but all doors and elevators have been sealed off. The only way up turns out to be through the exhaust vent above the radioactive water. Once TSI is feeling better, Angela takes over the computer and gives Jeremy and Bill directions to know where to climb. Unfortunately, the escaped Andromeda is deteriorating the pipes, and Bill notices he's about to fall, so he passes the key to Jeremy before plunging to his death. The problem is that they also need the thumb. Thus TSI decides to sacrifice himself by jumping into the radioactive water to get the thumb, which he tosses at Jeremy before dying as well. With Angela's guidance, Jeremy reaches the next level, though he gets wounded when he falls through the vent. With great effort, he drags his body through the floor and reaches the panel, effectively shutting down the self-destruction sequence. In Utah, Leela and Jack get far enough to finally get signal on the phone, so Jack calls Charlie to let him know about Ferris and the sample carriers. Manchek and his men fly above them but don't get to see them because they're too busy celebrating. The plan worked and Andromeda is being eaten away by Bacillus infernus. A few days later, a special funeral is organized to honor TSI and Bill. After the speech is over, Jack interviews the remaining members of the team. Jeremy is frustrated because Scott still refuses to shut down the vent mining project, so he takes the chance to speak against it on camera. Meanwhile, Manchek meets with Ferris to try to confront him about the stolen sample, but they both end up assassinated. In the end, a sample of Andromeda was still saved and sent by Beater to a space station orbiting Earth, where an astronaut puts it inside a container with the number and the interlocking triangles the scientists had seen on the code. This creates an ontological paradox that indicates this is the same container that will later travel through the wormhole.